Good morning once again. You have made it to the Creation Health Seminar, and our presenter is Lynell, LaMountain, one of the primary authors of the material for Creation Health. So if you came in early, one of the early birds, as they say, early bird gets the, you were able to get one of the bonus handouts. And if you did not, please look to someone else close by you that they may be willing to share as this is gone over. We have two today, and it is interpersonal relationships and trust. And some of you have been inquiring about how much the kit is. If you wanted to present this in your church or in your community, the kit is about $350 online at creationhealth.com. And many other materials are also available at creationhealth.com as well. I have one loaner for the Carolina Conference Health Ministries Department that we loan out for one church at a time using this kit. And the kit has everything you need to do a meeting successfully, other than the workbooks for the participants. Depending on what you're going to be doing, you'll be getting a different type of workbook. And if you would like to listen to a presentation you missed or share it with a friend, they are available on the conference website, carolinasda.org. You go to camp meeting, you look for the presenter's name and the day you want to listen to, and you can download it there. If you don't have Wi-Fi capability in your home and you want to order CD copies, you can do so by contacting the Adventist Christian Book Center. In fact, you can even order those while you're here. So right when you go in the camp meeting, right when you go into the ACBC, you'll see the cash registers, and there'll be one in the corner where Stan Shireman, the ACBC manager, is there. And there's a booth right at that entrance. Right when you come in and you just look to your left, you can see a little table. There's a sign-up sheet for CDs you can order. Okay? Let's see, what else did I miss? Okay, what other questions do you have about the seminar or any materials or things like that? Okay. Well, our speaker, as I mentioned, is Pastor LaMountain, and he's a speaker for Faith for Today, a co-host for Faith for Today, and obviously he's our Southern Union Health Ministries Director. And I noticed that yesterday he was on fire. I told him that yesterday, and I noticed that a lot more people were coming to him and talking after he got down nitty-gritty stuff with us yesterday. So, but we want to ask the Lord's blessing once again upon our time together. Father in heaven, we want to surrender this time to you and ask that you would bless us with your presence and lead us in our thinking, lead us in our lifestyle choices. And I pray that you would motivate us to focus on the areas that we need to focus on so that we can be better stewards for you and better models for our friends and family. And Lord, please continue to help us as we share with one another, that we can do it in a winsome way and be a blessing for your cause, not a hindrance. Thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Well, good morning, everybody. You doing okay? All right. Good. Well, I'm doing okay. I didn't get any death threats yesterday, so that was nice. It's not always the case. The other thing is, I wanted to say, I do nutrition. Okay, when I'm doing camp meetings, I'll put activity and nutrition together. It just makes sense for me. But when I'm doing a Creation Health seminar, I leave nutrition for the very end. So if there are people in here thinking about doing Creation Health seminar, I don't switch around the letters when I'm actually doing a public seminar. I keep it where it is. The good thing about that is this. So people are always asking how they can eat healthier. With nutrition at the end, it makes a very good way to transition people into some form of a cooking class your church might have. Now, despite what I said yesterday, I want you to know, I would, if it were me, if I were in a church again, I would offer two types of cooking classes. I would offer a vegan cooking class. People want to know how to cook that way, and I'd rather them come to my church or my school or even my hospital to learn how to do it than to go to some other organization down the street, because I'd like to maintain that friendship with them. Make sense? I'd also have a vegetarian cooking class. And I had to give them 2 choices. So it makes a great way to continue that relationship with those folks. All right. I am waiting to see if we can get a discount on those kits and to figure out how we can get that discount if they give it to us. I've contacted Florida Hospital, and I'm hoping, Brad said it's $350 on creationhealth.com, which it is. I'm hoping, I know in the past, hospital give us 20% discount at camp meetings, which saves $80. There's been change in the leadership teams at the hospital. They've been promoted to corporate, and so I'm not sure. I'm not sure my former team, my friends, have the authority to give a discount on a Florida Hospital product anymore, since they're going to corporate, and Florida Hospital owns that material. So we'll see. I'm hoping to hear from them before we're finished, at least by tomorrow. Okay, so today so far we talked about choice, rest, environment, activity, and nutrition. Are you kind of catching the spirit of the Creation Health approach? It tells people what they can do, not what they can't do. It tries to empower, support, and strengthen. And Creation Health, a lot of churches, they'll do Creation Health just for their church, and that's great. It's a good place to start, but is Creation Health just for our churches? It was built from the ground up to be taken to our communities, to relieve people suffering in the area of lifestyle health. So it's good to start with our churches. The challenge you will find at your church that I've been told is members oftentimes don't support health seminars like we think that they should because they feel like they know health. Like they think they know everything they need to know about health, which simply is not the case. So don't be discouraged. Practice with your church, but then take it to your community. Today we're going to be doing trust and interpersonal relationships. I would like to spend more time on interpersonal relationships, but we'll see how that goes. I know trust in God is very, very important, and it is, especially coming from a pastoral background. This one is, you cannot deny that spirituality is a dimension of whole person health. People who are healthy and live longest, they give attention to this spiritual dimension of their life. The last thing I would ever want to do, although we have plenty of science, which you're going to see some impressive studies, I think, this morning, is try to use scientific literature to convince people into a relationship with God. And I don't want to get preachy and try to get fiery and tell them, see what's going on? You need to have this in your life. Really, when it comes to this topic, and I'm speaking to those of you who might be doing Creation Health, this is really us sharing our testimony as a church. People looked at the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and they want to know why we live so long, and they have identified this as one of the pillars of our longevity. So we're kind of sharing our testimony, and we're doing it in a very invitational approach. Make sense? Not preachy, not overbearing, not heavy-handed, but very welcoming and inviting. So I want to get into trust. Before I do, I thought you would be interested in seeing a special that ABC News did on the Seventh-day Adventist. I think it's ABC News. They did on the Seventh-day Adventist Church. It's only about, I think, 2.5 minutes long, and they featured Loma Linda, and I want you to tell me when we're done what they said. Are you getting ready, Brett? Yeah, there we go. I want you to tell me what they said is the reason why Seventh-day Adventists live to be so old. So go ahead, Brad. Start it up.
Surviving on faith. Why does this religious community live longer than the rest of us? Our series, Living Longer, Living Better. A new ABC News USA Today poll being released in full tomorrow finds almost 2/3 of Americans say it's worth practicing moderation, exercising regularly, eating properly, avoiding alcohol and stress in order to live to 100. But are there other keys to longevity? Tonight, ABC's Gigi Stone introduces us to a community in Loma Linda, California that believes it has found the answer.
Marge Jetton got her first car around the time cars were invented. At 101 years old, she's still behind the wheel.
You go pretty fast, Marge.
Fast? I'm within the speed limit.
At 94, Marion Westermeyer is still perfecting his dive.
I don't think I'd be alive if I quit. Could you go out and get one of them?
And at 91, Dr. Ellsworth Wareham is visiting a patient he helped operate on last night.
It's enjoyable just to continue to be in the field.
All are members of America's longest living community, the Seventh-day Adventists of California.
The Adventist Church was born during an era of 19th century health reform. It has always preached and practiced a message of health. No smoking, no alcohol, no caffeine, no rich foods, and plenty plenty of exercise, like daily walks.
But the real secret, members say, is their faith itself.
It could be that there's something about prayer, something about the hope that engenders, something about the social support that they get.
There have been several studies to back that up. One U.S. government-funded study found those who attend religious services regularly live an average of 8 years longer. But not all researchers are convinced.
There's no evidence. There's no evidence that there's any medical benefit to religious practices.
101-year-old Marge doesn't concern herself with the debate. She's too busy.
You never have enough time to do all the things you want to do.
That's right, because you're so slow, it's exasperating.
She just renewed her driver's license for another 5 years.
I'm up like this, like this, like this.
After all, she needs to be able to get to her daily workouts. Gigi Stone, ABC News, Loma Linda, California.
We're finished.
Amen.
Well, so what do you think about that? That's pretty good, isn't it? Let me get away from the speakers. Gigi, Marge, she's since passed on since this was recorded. This was recorded a few years ago. But you know what I felt was interesting? Well, first of all, let me ask you. So what are they identifying as the Seventh-day Adventist contribution to health and longevity? Faith. Isn't that nice? I mean, growing up, it's like I felt like people were always talking about us and referring to us because we didn't eat pork and some stuff, didn't drink, didn't smoke. But isn't it nice to actually be studied for our faith? Now, I thought it was interesting, Gigi Stone, the reporter, as any journalist has to do, they have to bring in the opposing side. So she brings in that guy from Columbia Medical Center. There's no evidence. There's no evidence at all that, faith impacts. He's wrong, by the way. There is plenty of evidence, but she went on, cut right to to Marge. She's 101 years old, just left him after a couple seconds and went to her. So when it comes to trusting God, just know, I don't think this is anything that we should be ashamed about. I know at Florida Hospital, they were making some decisions when it came to Creation Health, and Creation Health being used as an employee wellness program. We've done it for Disney and there are other corporations, and the discussion was, well, what do we do? Because a lot of these corporations, they have these rules and policies about religion and God, and we honor those to the best that we can, right? But even though we might accommodate some of their requests, the decision was made, and even at corporate, we are a Seventh-day Adventist Christian hospital. And we are not going to remove the trust in God element from our lifestyle message, because it's who we are, and it's something that God has given us a blessing to speak about. Not only that, we have credibility when it comes to it. So we're going to talk about trusting God a little bit today for the next few minutes. I am losing things. Here we go. If I don't do it now, I'm going to forget. So there we go. Trusting God. Studies show, and Gigi Stone cited it, that people who are religious live on average, she said, 8 years longer on average. And this study in particular says 7 years. There are reasons why. What I want to get to the bottom of today with you is this. Why is this effect taking place? That's what we have to come away from this room knowing when we're through with trusting God. All right? By the way, Des Cummings Jr., he does the DVD on Trusting God. If you were to watch it, he does a devotional approach. I wrote the scripts for these DVDs based on the research Florida Hospital gave to me. And Des totally disregarded my script. And it's like, man, I did all that work for nothing. But then as I was watching him on this DVD, I felt the Holy Spirit really led him because he gives a very pastoral approach and a very welcoming approach to this topic, a very devotional approach. So if your church does it, I think you'll like that DVD, that presentation very much. We reserve the science for the presentation. Here's the thing. How you view God determines whether or not you're going to be healthy and live long. So if you have a positive viewpoint of God, you will have wellness effects. But if you have a negative viewpoint of God, will that affect you in a poor way in wellness, or what do you think? Poor. So your view, if your view is you think God is punishing, vindictive, out to get you, you will not have the same benefits that someone else will have, even though you might believe in God. In fact, I want to share a piece of research with you. They did a research study with patients. It says patients who reported feeling alienated from or unloved by God or attributed their illness to the devil were associated with a 19 to 28% increase in risk of dying. So they felt unloved by God, alienated by God, isolated from God, or, very important, attributed their illness to who? The devil. They increased the risk of dying early death by 19 to 28%. Now, who's behind illness and disease? We know, right? It's interesting, though, that even if you kind of acknowledge that in a very intentional way, that has a negative effect on your wellness as well. You know, the devil hasn't done anything that deserves any attention at all. So when it comes to our health and our lifestyle and our wellness and our walk with God, our faith, or daily living, don't put any attention on him. I mean, I've been in churches where, and it's fine, I understand what they're doing. I've been in churches where they'll get in a prayer circle and you hold hands, and there'll be someone, especially if they're an active prayer ministry, it seems, there'll be someone in the circle, and I'm not judging them, there'll be someone in the circle that will say, and we bind your hands, Satan, and they'll really address him in that prayer, and, we have authority over him, don't we? I mean, Jesus did that. Authority to cast out. My dad has been involved with that. My uncle in crusades has been involved with those sorts of situations, very scary situations. I remember Uncle Ronnie telling me about a meeting in Ottawa, Ontario, where there was a guy from the occult who was coming to the meetings, and they did some really strange things in that occult. Makes me think it might have been, I don't know what it was. I can't tell you. But he described some of the things that they did, and I don't want to talk about it. So anyway, he said one night the guy was getting up, and the guy was being chased through the house with a knife in the air behind him. Uncle Ronnie was in other houses where people were dabbling in the occult, and they would get they would start praying, and he said the cupboards would start shaking, and in this one particular case, cupboards started shaking in the house, and the plates rattled out and broke onto the floor. And there wasn't an earthquake, there wasn't any phenomenon, it was just happening. So, I mean, there's scary stuff. And the good news is that we have nothing to be afraid of, even though it's kind of scary, because we know someone who's stronger than all of that to begin with. And we have the power, through him, he's in us, gives us the power to vanquish that. The point of the matter is, even though we know where it comes from, and we have the authority to bind and cast out, I would say, most of the time, let's keep the focus on Jesus Christ, the great physician. Thank him for his strength, for his presence, for his power, for his healing regeneration, because the evil forces in this world don't deserve any attention from us, I don't think at all. We will have to deal with them and fight them, but we need to keep the focus where it belongs. Let me see. Forgiveness. So when we talk about trust in God, forgiveness is something I sort of emphasize because in my work with people, there are people who come to our meetings, they've gone through things that are absolutely horrific. And they have a right, you would say, to feel the way they do and to be in the condition they're in. Dr. Frederick Luskin writes, the practice of forgiveness has been shown to reduce anger, hurt, depression, and stress, and leads to greater feelings of hope, peace, compassion, and self-confidence. What they did, this guy, I checked, and I don't think he's even a Christian, but he did a study on forgiveness. And what they did was they took people and they had them relive that grievance, whatever happened to them that they felt was unjust or was criminal. Some people have bad things happen. And as they were reliving those memories, they had them hooked up to machines. Their blood pressure went up, their heart started going faster. You could tell the stress hormones were affecting their body as they were simply reliving those memories. What they did then was they took those patients and put them through 9 hours of forgiveness training to teach them how to forgive others and how to forgive themselves. They had them relive those very same memories. Blood pressure didn't go up. Pulse didn't go up. There was no stress response to that memory any longer because they had learned how to forgive. I'll just tell you, people have had certain things done to them that the person or group that did whatever they did to that person, that group really doesn't deserve forgiveness when you look at what some people have gone through. But there is someone who does deserve that forgiveness process. It's the victim. Unless you go through that forgiveness process, you will remain a victim. And you don't want that. Someone said it's sort of like this. It's like drinking poison and expecting somebody else to die. If you don't forgive, right? Holding that pain and bitterness and anger, even if you're justified in doing it, it's like drinking poison and expecting somebody else to die. This forgiveness is very tough for me, has been tough through the years. I'll share a story with you. My brother, our relationship is challenging. So I don't want you to think this is a feel-good, nice story. But my brother and I were quite old, and he's quite older than I am. And the LaMountains are a stubborn group. Let me just say LaMountains are a stubborn group. And so we have to learn the hard way a lot of times, and he did too. And so I remember back when I was in Southern College, I came into the Talish Hall, the boys' dorm, and the secretary said, the police are on the phone and they want to talk to you. It's like, why do they want to talk to me? So they get on the phone. I'm on the phone. They said, your brother's wife wants you to come to the hospital. Your brother's getting ready for surgery. I said, what's going on? And they wouldn't tell me. So I said, I'll be there. So I drove up to the hospital. And turns out my brother was working as a security guard at the night shift at the time. And he'd come home from his night shift, and he was sitting at his breakfast table eating some cereal or something. And a man that he had run-ins with broke into his house, walked down the hallway and met him at the table and pointed a .357 at him and said, I'm going to kill you. And so my brother, he took his whatever he had there on the table and threw everything at him and pushed him aside because my brother didn't have a gun or anything with him, and he was running down the hallway to get out of his house to try to save his life. And as he was leaping out of the door, this man shot twice and shot my brother twice in the back with his .357. My brother's outside, bleeding, and you can imagine what type of trauma is a result of that injury. And he gets up, my brother gets up, the man comes out, my brother's running, trying to run, and the man still tries to shoot, but the gun is jamming. Wouldn't shoot anymore. My brother ran about 100 yards, they say, and collapsed. It had been raining. He collapsed under a tree in the mud, blood everywhere. And this man, a few minutes later, drove by or walked by in his car, looked at my brother, and my brother looked dead. So he just left. Now, I get there, and I can still see my brother, I'm on those gurneys, and they have tubes coming out of everywhere, and all this other stuff. I can still see that like it's yesterday. And we were very fortunate because the doc on duty in the ER that morning just happened to be a doc who had served in Vietnam. So he was very used to dealing with this type of trauma, these bullets. And these bullets were near vital organs in my brother, but the doctor was able to, he did his thing. And my brother recovered and didn't recover fully, still has problems to this day, but my brother, he's alive. And so they caught this man, and they put him in the psychiatric center, and they let him go 60 days later. So there was something, our family still hasn't figured out what was going on in that situation. So they said he was insane at the time of the incident, and they let him go. He was fine afterwards. Even today, if that happens, they just don't let you go. So I don't know what was happening. I was young. I didn't know anybody in that particular city on that level, but they let him go. It was just really a horrible situation. And I remember him saying that he wasn't going to stop until my brother was dead. So my brother, he took his family, and they fled because they knew they weren't going to get any protection from the police or anyone else, and their solution to the problem, they felt, was to go into hiding. And so for years and years and years and years, I didn't know where my brother was. I'd always thought of him being like my best man at my wedding, and that didn't happen. I didn't know where he was. And we couldn't know because we didn't want there to be any way that anybody could get any information out of us. But I'm here to tell you. So I'm not proud of this. I only share it because maybe it'll help somebody in the room. I'm going to confess to you, I hated that man who tried to kill my brother. And I had a right to hate him. Now, that filled me with a lot of guilt because here I am going through Southern College to be a pastor. Taking these religious classes, and not only that, I'm a preacher's kid raised in the church, hearing all these sermons that these people I respect and love have preached, and you know what? I still harbor this hatred in my heart. If you ever remember the I Dream of Jeannie television show, she'd do this, and something would happen. If I could have done this and gotten rid of that guy, he would have been gone. So lucky for him, we don't have that type of power. So that happened in around 1987, 88, somewhere in there. My memory's a little foggy. It's been almost 30 years. And fast forward to 1997, 96, 97, Jacksonville Mandarin Church invited me to be their senior pastor in 1996. And at the church board, at the interview meeting, one of the board members held up a book and said, this is the type of church we want to become. Now, some of you will be okay with it, some of you won't. But it was Rick Warren's Purpose-Driven Church. And I thought, well, that's a pretty exciting invitation that the core leadership of the church, they know what they want to do, number one, and they know what they want to become, which is rare. And I felt that was an exciting challenge and felt like the Lord was leading in that direction. And after praying and thinking about it for 3 weeks, we said yes. It took so long to think about it because my wife was getting her master's in music education at the University of Tennessee, and it meant that she and I would have to be apart from each other for a year. Me moved down to Jacksonville, Florida, and she had to stay in Chattanooga. So that's what made that decision really hard. The church said, you know what, come down and we will figure out a way to fly her down at least once a month so you all can have some time together. So we did that. And so what the church wanted to do was they wanted to go and learn more about becoming a purpose-driven church, which is Rick Warren's church in Saddleback. Which, by the way, I've met with Rick Warren's Daniel team, their pastor who's in charge of their Daniel. Now their health ministries is a signature ministry of their church. For many years, he didn't really emphasize health because he didn't feel like he had the integrity to really push it because he didn't feel like he was as healthy as he should have been, right? And their team told me, they said, we looked at every faith-based whole person health seminar out there, and they said Creation Health is the best one we found. And when I was at the hospital, they were actually wanting to have some conversations about integrating Creation Health into their Daniel plan, but I left, and I don't know where those conversations are. But they did say that when people call Saddleback Church and they want to know more about living healthy, they said we very often are recommending them to look into the Creation Health product that the Seventh-day Adventist Church has. So anyway, I go out there with my team, take them out to the Purpose-Driven Church Conference, and when you know it, Rick Warren just happens to be preaching on forgiveness. And this is like, I've been carrying this hatred in my heart for at least 7 years, 8 years, and it's kind of miserable. You're miserable, and then you're guilty, and then I felt ashamed. I'm a pastor, and I feel this way, And he said, listen, some of you have been hurt and been hurt deeply. And he said, you can't find it in yourself to forgive the person who hurt you. He said, here's a place, he says, I'd suggest that you would consider starting. He says, if you can't forgive that person, pray to Jesus and ask him, Jesus, please forgive that person for me. At least ask Jesus to come in with his forgiveness and forgive that person for you. And so I thought, well, I can do that. Even if I don't feel like it, I can do that. And so I started praying that prayer, and it would have been around 1996, maybe May of 1997, because that's usually when the conference was. So 1997. So it had been much longer. It had been well over 6 years, maybe close to 8 years I've been living with that. And by around 2000, I reached the point where I could actually pray, Jesus, I want you to forgive him for what he's done to my family. And I mean it, because in my way of thinking, well, first of all, it brought a great sense of peace and relief to me. Just felt like this pain had been lifted. But secondly, if he can be forgiven, and if he can find Christ, and through it all, he can find salvation and be in heaven, that's really what it's all about anyway. It's not about punishing somebody for something they did that they shouldn't have done. I'm not saying we should just let go of justice and let our compassion let people off the hook for what they do. There are consequences of decision. Understand? Please don't misinterpret what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if he could find Christ and have an eternal life with Jesus Christ, then it kind of, in a certain way, what he did to my brother, it counts for something. It's just not a meaningless evil action in my way of thinking, and I'm not being very clear. So I know that when it comes to forgiveness, you cannot be fully well, and you will not be fully healthy as long as you're harboring hatred in your heart. You've got to let it go. And they found, I'll come to you, what they found too is people with addictions, those who've learned to forgive themselves, they have a much higher track record of staying on the wagon, so to speak. You've got to learn to forgive yourself through it all. And we're sometimes the last person we want to forgive is us because we feel like God's requiring some kind of emotional penance from us, which is not true. Question?
Just a comment. I can relate to you on a different subject, and that is I bet you that this room has got quite a few people that's like this. Infidelity in marriage is another tough one.
It is.
And fortunately for me, I didn't have to go through the many years that you did because my mom was a forgiveness saint.
Amen.
She passed it on to me, and that infidelity came into my life, and I found out that ground zero to healing is forgiveness.
Amen. You're absolutely correct. It's forgiveness. If anyone in here has some pain, some bitterness, some whatever, I'd invite you to start praying the prayer, Jesus, forgive that person. Jesus, forgive me. Just let it come in and wash all of that away. But it will be a process, okay? Maybe for some of you it will happen overnight. It didn't for me. It might take a little time.
I was an Adventist for 5 years before I forgave myself. And the pastor did a sermon on 2 Corinthians
Nice. One of his ex-wives sent him a text with balloons.
And I just smiled.
Yep. Nice. What did the other ex-wives send? I'm just curious. No.
Not a word from the other.
Not a word from them. That might be a gift in itself. I don't know. 5 years, he said he's going to have this for 5 years before he learned how to forgive himself. All right. If you do Creation Health seminars, it's really good to spend some time on forgiveness. A great resource for you. I hope it still exists. I don't know, anyone here heard of Dick Tibbetts? Dick Tibbetts started out in youth ministry, and he went on to the health system. He left the health system, and he came back. I don't know if he's still there because I left a while ago. Dick Tibbetts wrote a book called Forgive to Live. He's a Seventh-day Adventist minister, wrote a book, Forgive to Live. You probably can find it on Amazon. It's one of the best books on forgiveness you can find. Florida Hospital Publishing actually took that book and turned it into a 6-week forgiveness seminar. I hope they still publish it. You might want to Google Florida Hospital Publishing, and in their products, look for Forgive to Live, because I saw churches do that in Florida. Yep.
It's available at our ACBC, that book.
The book, so you can get it
Forgive
today
to
at your
Live.
ACBC. And then you can go to Florida Hospital Publishing to see if they have the Forgive to Live seminar. In Florida, when churches did it, they had people driving, sometimes an hour to get to the meeting because the pain was so deep and what they're hearing was so freeing, so liberating. So Forgive to Live would be a great follow-up to a Creation Health seminar in your churches. Dick Tibbetts. I think it's Tibbits. Tibbits. All right, let's segue now into the science a little bit. They find that religiousness, faith. By the way, when they look at this, these research studies, they study people from world religions. This is not just a Christian point of view. Now, don't feel bad about that. I mean, they looked at Hindu, Buddhist, Christian. They looked at Jew. Did I say Jewish? They looked at all of the world religions. And so we're getting this facts from that. So on top of that, though, you have Creation Health, which is a Seventh-day Adventist presentation, correct? And the Adventists have been known, and I didn't show you the other interview because I didn't want to take the time. We are known to produce more centenarians, more 100-year-olds than anybody else on the planet. And it's not just here in the States or Loma Linda. It's duplicated anywhere on planet Earth, which is unique to us. So we have this research on religion. Then you have the Adventists come in, and it's like research on steroids, so to speak. So don't be shy about using this research just because they studied people of other religions. It's not a bad thing. They found that a religious person, a person of faith, actually has a decrease in these diseases, starting with cancer all the way. You can read as well as I can. And there's other research I want to get to here. Look at this. They reviewed more than 1,200 studies, which included almost 126,000 people, 125,826. That's pretty impressive. And they found that being religious, being a person of faith, increases your longevity by 29%, increases your chance of living longer by 29%. So this guy at Columbia Medical Center, I don't know what science he was looking at. Maybe this wasn't out when he was doing his thing, but there's something to being religious and being a person of faith. And we're going to figure out why this works. This is not mystical. This is not magical. There's a reason why these effects are happening. Trusting God. They did a research project for 5 years with a little over 2,000 people. This really makes me laugh a little bit, and I'll tell you why. Ages 55 and up, to see what factors would be the best predictors of longevity. After 5 years, the most significant factor predicting who was still alive was attending religious services. Now, I kind of laugh at that because, I just turned 50 this past December, and I don't think 55 is that old. Not as old as it used to be. So I would expect 5 years later for most of those folks to still be alive. Hopefully, But it's interesting that they isolated the independent predictor as being attending religious services. Corporate worship. People who worship together, they have healthier behaviors. They quit smoking, more active, less depressed. This really gets us into the why. So you have people who are people of faith are healthier, they live longer. There are at least 3 reasons. Some of them are on here. What are some reasons why, and don't be afraid to say some things on the slide, what are some reasons why you think people of faith are healthier and live longer? Relationships is a huge one because people in isolation, which we'll see in the next section, they don't do well at all. So when you're a faith community is a community of relationships. People are there for you. You have a safety net. But as important, not only do you have a safety net with people who are there for you, you're there for someone else that gives your life meaning and purpose, which probably is a stronger benefit than having someone there for you being there for someone else. So relationships are huge. Accountability is huge. When you're with people who share the same values as you do, there's an accountability factor there to keep living that type of life. In fact, people of faith usually put a higher standard, in particular, on what? The body. And you're happier. Because there's less depression because you're happier. You know that we're going to talk about the body, but let's address this right now. You're happier because you're not alone and you're not without resources. God is there. You're not alone. He's not worried or scared about what you're going through. And you know you're going to make it through one way or the other. So that relieves your mind. And you're happier. You are happier because, you have a broader perspective anyway. And Jesus loves me. And nothing happened. There's anything you can do that's going to make him not love you. So they're happier, less depression. There's relationships. There's this accountability thing. This value on the body is really interesting for the Christian faith, and other faiths have it too, because, we know that unless Jesus comes, we're all going to die. And some people say, well, if I'm going to die, I'll just live however I want to live anyway. They have this fatalistic kind of idea. But we don't. We say these bodies are important. The Bible calls them a what? A temple. So important. And as we keep this healthy, we have the energy and the vitality and everything we need to live life to the fullest and enjoy each other to the fullest and live our mission and our purpose. We want to keep this healthy and strong. And God says the body is so important to him. I mean, think of it. He didn't have to do it this way, but he did it anyway. From the dust of the ground, he created us, right? And then we die. If we die before Jesus comes, Paul writes about it in 1 Thessalonians, there's going to be a what? A resurrection. This idea of valuing the body is so important to God. This is from Dr. John Pauline, Loma Linda University. Heard him present this. He was one of my professors at Andrews. He said, God values the body so strongly and so deeply, he's actually going to resurrect it from the ground. And then we're going to join those who have not died, and we're going to be with God throughout the ceaseless ages of eternity. This is worth keeping healthy. First of all, it's important to God, and even if you didn't care that it was important to him, it would be important to us because once this is gone, it's really hard to live. I'm not talking, some people are dead before they draw their last breath. I mean, last year when I was sick, I had all I could do to get up. I wanted to get out in the sunshine and get some fresh air. I had all I could do to get out of the house and walk maybe 50 yards down and back. I mean, I was that weak, which was doubly hard for me because you can tell that I probably wouldn't deal with low energy that well. And it's like, man, once your health is gone, what's left? Yeah, they'll give everything to get their health back. I had CMV. I had I had CMV hepatitis. Yes, that's it. And 80% of the people in this room have it, but it won't present unless you've worn yourself out, you're fatigued, and your immune system is down. And I've been burning the candle at both ends and traveling. And I had also had my labrum repaired. I had surgery, and after the surgery was done, they sent me home with 2 pain pumps that were inserted into the nerve points, and they had me on some strong painkillers. And so I think the painkillers actually is what weakened my liver. And everything together made me sick, and it was horrible, horrible, horrible. I felt like throwing up every day for 8 weeks. And there were times where I got so hungry I had hunger pains. Women say it's like you're describing morning sickness. You want to throw up, but then you want to eat a little something. They gave me a nausea medicine. They give chemotherapy patients. Didn't do anything. Didn't take it away. So, some days I might eat a handful of blackberries or grapes or something like that, and that would be it. And I thought I had liver cancer or pancreatic cancer because we just lost Gail Tucker to pancreatic cancer. So that was on my mind. But I'm glad it was CMV, and I'm glad it attacked my liver. If it attacked my eyes or ears, I could have gone deaf or blind. So that's what I had, CMV hepatitis. So this is not something secret or mystical in the church when it comes to religion and longevity. People of faith live longer because they have friendships. They have a relationship with each other. They have a relationship with God. They have a higher value on their bodies, so they take care of themselves. They have a purpose. They have a cause. All of these things work together to improve their quality of life. Did you have a statement? I like it. Certainly attitude and heart and spirit. Yep.
When you've got these things you're talking about,
yep.
You participate in less risky activities.
Yeah, that's true.
Speeding or putting it in
right.
dangerous situations.
absolutely. And there are reasons why. We don't have time to get into that, but that's absolutely true. Okay, I want to leave time. Okay, so we're going to wrap this up. There's much more I could share. I'm spending a little bit less time on this because, chances are most of the people in this room, this is probably one of the more familiar principles of the 8 we've been talking about this week. So when I'm talking to those in my public seminars, when I wrap it up with this, at the end I'll say, I'll invite them to consider, I'll say, if you're interested in this area of your life, this spiritual dimension, and you might feel uncomfortable or a little awkward, then I would invite you to consider maybe just giving this a little bit more of your attention this coming week. Think about it and what it would mean to you to grow in this area of your life or to bring this component into your health and wellness and fitness. And it can be as simple as deciding to start praying. And prayer isn't anything mysterious. It's really nothing more than talking. And talk to God like you would your best friend. You don't have to be in a certain position. You can talk on your walk. You can talk when you're stuck in rush hour on whatever highway you're on. It's I-4 in our town. You can talk with God wherever you are. Just share with Him your concerns, your worries, your challenges, your dreams. I invite you to consider starting a conversation and then listening for the promptings on your heart. And spend time, if you want to take it to the next level, maybe reading His Word. A good place to start is the Psalms. They're pretty short, and they're very encouraging. Or the Proverbs, very encouraging. Or if you have never spent much time in the New Testament, the book of John really has some encouraging, inspiring stories. If you have thought about a community of faith and want to give that some thought, we would invite you to come to our church, and spend some time with us in the coming weeks if your schedule allows. I'm talking to you like I would talk to them. And what I would do, by the way, is I would have pre-planned an event at my church, either for the morning or the afternoon. I wouldn't care either way, probably the morning because that's when most people come. And I have planned bringing in an expert, a real expert, who knows what they're talking about and is trained and has, like someone who can speak on childhood obesity or diabetes. Or I'd have an expert come into my church. I already have them scheduled, and I'd invite the folks, in 2 weeks, at our church, we're going to be spending an hour talking about childhood obesity. Or we're going to be spending an hour at our church on Saturday morning. We're going to be talking about marriage and the top 7 ways to strengthen our relationship with our spouse. I would have something planned. You need to give them a reason to come. And you need to give the Holy Spirit something to work with. He can work with nothing, and they formed the world out of nothing, right? But our job is to do something, I think. And at the end of the day, choose to make a trusting relationship with God a priority. And as you do, you're going to be healthier, happier, live longer, and everything's going to be better, especially if you get the forgiveness part down. I rushed through that because I want to save the last part for interpersonal relationships. And I think, there you go. I do it every single time. You know why that happens every single time? Because for about 10 years now, the way I use this is show the DVD and people fill it in while the DVD is playing. If the DVD is not playing, and by the way, I want to say it again, I wasn't planning on bringing these. When Florida Hospital found out I was coming to Carolina camp meeting, they gave me 90 sets. So we should have about enough, if we had one per family. I'm sorry that some people might have been, some people are upset or hurt they might not have gotten one. It makes me wonder if I should have brought them at all. But if your family has more than one, maybe you can share. But this is a bonus. This is not something I planned on using here because they're expensive. It's $3,500 for what they gave us. So the first blank. If you were to watch the DVD and hear Dez's presentation, this is directly from his presentation. Full freedom requires full trust. Full freedom requires full trust. This, I know, is not going to make a lot of sense because none of this comes from the presentation I just did, but I'm going to give you the answers. Second line. God is always with you, always forgives you, always loves you. In my devotions this morning, Psalm 37. I love Psalm 37. Been in it all week long. It struck me, and we know this. So God loves us, and there are people in this room who think, well, He has to love us because He's God. Well, He can't not help but love us because He's God. But here's the thing you need to keep in mind. He wants to love us. And that makes me feel pretty nice. God loves me, but He wants to love me. And He wants to love you. And that's a different quality of love. Some people you love because you have to. Right? But then there's some people you love because you want to. And that's how He loves us. Third line. God's promises are a dimension of trust. God's promises are a dimension of trust. And the last 3 lines, Des would say, learn God's promises. This is really easy. Claim God's promises. His dad was a big promise keeper fella in keeping promises, not the organization promise keeper. The last line is, prayer is a dynamic of trust. Prayer is a dynamic of trust. And Des, in his DVD presentation on this video, says, live with heaven on your mind. He says, when you bring God into your life, it'll be stamped with meaning. And he says, turning to God as your first choice instead of your last result changes everything. So that's his whole approach in that devotional is turn to God for your first choice instead of your last result. And that kind of turns your life around. If you missed some of those, I'll be around for a few minutes afterwards. Okay, so here's the question, I wonder. So it's 10:01, we have 29 minutes. That DVD is 12 minutes long. Thank you. She said, you can always get the DVD, but you can't always listen to me. I appreciate that, because I'd really rather not watch the DVD, because there's something at the very end I want to talk about in relationships, and I don't want to be rushed like I was, like I've been this week. So you'll be okay if we don't do the DVD? Okay, so let's not do the DVD. DVD is very good, by the way. It's one of our best. Dr. Winnie King does it, and I've been told by the people at Florida Hospital that when it comes to people being interested in our DVDs, because they put these up on, they put a few minutes of each one up on YouTube, I guess. At least they used to. I don't know if they still do. And relationships is always gets the most views of anybody, because do you think people are challenged in their relationships today? Just a little bit. Especially today. No, I can't go over. Sorry. I suppose what we could do is if people want to stay at the end, they could watch the DVD. Okay. You know, after 10:30, after prayer, people want to sit. Don't feel obligated to stay. If you have no interest, go do your thing. Or if you have something more important, if there's 2 or 3 who want to watch it, I'll stay while we do it at the end. Okay, relationships. You ever heard of Dean Ornish? What's he known for? Heart. He made this statement, really kind of shocks me a little bit. He said, I'm not aware of any other factor in medicine, talking about health and longevity now, not diet, smoking, exercise, stress, genetics, drugs, surgery, that has a greater impact on our quality of life, incidence of illness, and the premature death from all causes than does social connection, is the subject he's referring to there. So this guy, I'd think, he's a reversing heart disease guy. You would have thought he had said maybe reducing your saturated fat content, or making sure you get at least 20, 25 minutes of aerobic exercise at 85%, at least 3 to 4 times a week to reduce the fatty acids in your liver. You'd have thought he would have identified something you could do nutritionally or exercise-wise to be healthier, but he doesn't. He zeroes in on relationships. And if there were ever a time we needed help in having healthy, positive, productive relationships, it's today. Because it's insanity out there. There's more hatred in this world today than I've witnessed at any point in my short lifetime of 50 years. It's rough. One of the reasons why it's rough, just as an aside, and I don't feel comfortable to go into great detail on this, but so at Faith for Lifestyle magazine last year, we had Dr. Gary Small, not Gary Smalley, it's a different doctor, Gary Small, from UCLA, one of those universities in California. And they've been doing research. First of all, I'm going to tell you this, but promise me you're not going to make any drastic changes based on what I'm about to tell you. Okay? Especially with your kids, because the kids are the ones who are going to lose if you just take this legalistically. I'm bringing it to your awareness as one of the reasons why we might be dealing with what we're dealing out there. He said they've done research studies. I don't know how many people were in the study. I don't know how long the study lasted. Okay? So that's another reason why you got to do your own research. They've been studying the effect of electronic devices on children. So I'm going to say what I'm going to say, but I hope I can remember what I want to say as a follow-up to that, because something needs to be said as a different side. And he said what they think they're finding is that a lot of time spent in these electronic devices are rewiring their brains, and it's affecting the empathetic, it's lowering their empathy. It's making them less empathetic. And that you kind of see that. People are kind of more raw than they used to be. less concerned about how it might affect you, this thing I say or this thing I do. It's actually horrific, the stuff we see. Actually, from adults who should know better in this country. They should be ashamed of themselves with some of the things that they're doing. And I'm thinking specifically, regardless what political side, we're not talking about politics. We'll just argue all day long, even worse than diet and other stuff. But, when you have leaders in our church or leaders in our government, I know we have free speech and we're all First Amendment, right? But you don't make threats and say things about the death of our president and hold up images and things like that about the death of our president. I mean, that's not even respectful. I don't think. That's just my opinion. So moving on. So you have kids who are not as empathetic as we used to be because of these devices. On the other hand, now keep this in mind, you have more kids on the spectrum today than ever before. 1 in 68 boys is diagnosed with autism of some kind. And they're finding that there is a great effect with incorporating these electronic devices and working some of these special needs people. All right? So, you can't just be a legalist and all or nothing. Use your brain. But I'm just saying it's interesting when we look at this research that's going on that maybe how electronics could be affecting the brain. There are other reasons too. The Bible says as we get closer to the end of time, something's going to be withdrawn from the world little by little. The Holy Spirit, right? Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. 1/3 of people report feeling lonely. 25% of Americans have no one to confide in. That means 1 in 4 people that you meet is socially isolated. They are socially bankrupt. Loneliness is now classified as a disease. And on this screen, down here, loneliness increases premature death by up to 500%. Is loneliness a kind of pain? Yes or no? Yes. What do people do with their pain? They medicate it. They try to get rid of it, and if they can't get rid of it, then they try to medicate it, which is they're trying to numb it, correct? Here are the things that people are doing to numb their pain. They're abusing drugs and alcohol, smoking, overeating. You could actually put in there, I know marijuana is a drug, but now it's being legalized in so many states, we could just put that in its own category, marijuana. Anyway, overeating, overworking. I see this in the church, overworking, especially with pastors and church leaders. They have pain in their life. I'm not going to say they're lonely, but there's some pain in their life, and so overwork becomes a way they can distract themselves from that pain. Overwork is a way to medicate themselves from that pain so they don't have to be face-to-face with it. Depression, it increases depression and increases premature death by 500%. I always share this study everywhere I go. I've done it every single time. The Alameda County study in California, they followed 7,000 people for 40 years wanting to find out what one thing people do to stay the healthiest. And I'm going to read a short sentence, and I'm going to read a very long sentence. This is a gold standard study, an example of why, oh, by the way, a lot of those studies in the trust, those were long studies, 20 years, 30 years. This one's a 40-year study. Reason why the creation of material might not be updated as often as people want, but you can't duplicate a 40-year study that often. It takes 40 years. So here's what the researchers said. They said, social connection helps prevent premature death. Now here's a long sentence. It is a more powerful predictor of health and longevity than age, gender, race, social economic status, self-reported physical health status, and health practices such as smoking, alcoholic beverage consumption, overeating, physical activity, and utilization of preventative health services, as well as a cumulative index of health practices. So they threw everything in there, and what they're trying to say is this. If there's one thing you could do to be your healthiest, it's go make a friend. Go enjoy your friends. Enjoy your relationships. You can get a dog. We're going to talk about dogs in a minute. What's your dog's name again? Maggie. Get a dog. So this tells me, so we're people of faith. We're from faith communities. Most of us in here probably attend a religious service at least once a week. When you go to church, I'm speaking to me, because you can kind of tell I'm kind of like a driven kind of guy. And I'm asking the Lord to make me more compassionate. That's an area of growth for me. So when people come into my church or wherever I am, one of the most important things that's happening there is how is my spirit in receiving them, in acknowledging them. Anybody who goes to your church, every single person should be acknowledged that they're there. Especially if you're dealing with one of these socially bankrupt people. They're not on anybody's radar screen. I don't care how they smell, how they're dressed, if they look weird, act weird, whatever. God brought them there for a reason. If there's any place they should feel acknowledged on the face of the earth, it should be in our communities of faith. You might not have the answer to the problem, the solution. You might not know how to even fix what's going on. God does. So let Him use your arms to let them feel loved. The answer will come, is my belief. They looked at people 100 years old to find commonalities, and they found these 6. What's number 2 on the list? Yep, you're not going to find a 100-year-old who's isolated. They don't exist. This is an amazing study. So you've heard of Dr. Siegel? There's another doctor called Dr. Spiegel. Dr. Spiegel could not stand Dr. Siegel because everybody was confusing him, Spiegel, with Siegel. And Siegel's contribution, one of the contributions, was the effect of social connection on a person's health. So what Spiegel did to make sure his name stood out on its own is he decided to do a research project that would show that Siegel was all wrong. And then people would remember Spiegel there on out and get it right. So he did a particular study with female breast cancer survivors. And Dr. Dean Ornish actually interviewed him. And this is a direct quote from Dr. Spiegel. He says, "I finally got around to looking at the data, and I almost fell off of my chair. Those women who had the weekly support group lived an average of twice as long as did the other group of women who didn't have the support group. All of the women in the comparison group, which is women who did not have the support group, all of the women in the comparison group were dead after 5 years. The only women still alive were those who had received the weekly group support sessions. Also, the time from the first metastasis to death was significantly longer in those who had received the weekly support groups." So he came around to Siegel's side of the argument. I don't know. I'd like to know. I can't imagine that they wouldn't. You know, we already have built into our weekend format, our Sabbath morning format, a time where this could happen. Where would that be? Yeah, nobody comes. You do, okay. I'm sorry. You take Maggie too? All right, good. Sabbath school is a great time. I'll come to your question. Sabbath school is a great time. You know, if you lead Sabbath school, please put some thought into it. Okay, so I love you, and I'm saying this in kindness. I'm challenging you. Please try to come up with a unique point of view. You go to Sabbath school, and people leave it to the last minute to prepare. They tell you what you've heard the last 40 years because they've not given the Holy Spirit time, and they've not taken time to prepare to actually study this material. So try to do a good job. And I would, if it were me teaching a Sabbath school, I would do this in my pastor's class. But if it were me now teaching a Sabbath school, I'd prepare, like I know you all know that we ought to. But I'd probably leave a significant amount of time for some interpersonal interaction now that I know how this works. Before, I'd have been concerned about getting through the material, right? At the age of 50, having learned this stuff, I'm less concerned with getting through the material now than I am of really trying to strengthen and empower and support that social connection with those folks. I think if Sabbath school was a place where that was happening, I don't know, maybe we'd be doing better. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. Oh. No way. So she lived 20 months, 17 months longer with leukemia than her prognosis because of the support groups. You know, and here's the thing. Thank you for sharing that. That triggered another thought. If you need a support group, people have all sorts of pain. I've seen it. If you have an addiction, if you have a relationship challenge, and you feel like a support group would be helpful to you, but you're afraid of what the church will think, don't care what the church is going to think. Go get the help that you need. That's an area of growth for the Seventh-day Adventist Church. They make it, they're judgmental and critical oftentimes. You know, it could be some people, so I just heard the story this week because we're working on an addiction recovery program for the union. I say we have 2 passionate leaders in our union. I think we're going to put something that we can use locally. They were training someone who was going to an AA meeting, and someone in the church, so this was a Seventh-day Adventist, and someone in the church found out he was going to an AA meeting. And so they were saying, "We didn't know you had a drinking problem." What they didn't know, he was going to the AA meeting to support one of his friends who had a drinking problem. And there's this stigma we have attached to that. What is wrong with us? Can we just take a deep breath and relax and back off and let people exist and grow and let the Holy Spirit do his work with them and being an encouraging force in their life? If we cannot be an encouraging force in their life, we should zip it. Yes, I mean it. And all of these comments I'm saying to you are housed within the context of thinking of what my son might encounter when Dad's no longer here. It's out of jealousy for him and the other kids, and we're all God's kids. If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all, is my opinion. All right. What predicts positive aging? A good marriage at the age of 50 or low cholesterol at the age of 50? I'm picking on you a little bit, but I noticed Maggie's owner up here didn't have a lot to say about that one, so I'm just joking. You seem to be the type I can pick on. Okay, you're on a third one. She's a Christian. You're doing better. That's good. Okay, you weren't a Christian in the first two, so you're taking some responsibility. Did your wife give you a birthday card, or was it just the ex-wife? Okay. Thanks for playing. Okay, wife's at home having to work. It's actually a good marriage, which really isn't fair, because if you're living right, eating right, and exercising, you'd think that if you're not in a marriage at age 50, you should have the edge because of how you're keeping your body. This point illustrates that God designed this body to have compensating mechanisms. You might not be where you ought to be with your cholesterol, and cholesterol is a huge debate in the industry right now, I understand, with the Framingham study and some wonderful results they've come up with. Review studies of the Framingham study. But the thing is, if you might not be where you feel you ought to be with your nutrition or exercise, God has built us in such a way that there are other factors of your life that can make up that difference to some degree. I mean, there's a line where it's not going to make up for everything, right? But it helps with some stuff. I often tease people that, you know what, if you have a bad marriage at the age of 50 and high cholesterol, well, call your pastor. Call a priest. Babies who were born premature, what they did with them is they did a study with them. The nurses would stroke their arms and legs for 15 minutes, 3 times a day. So 3 15-minute sessions just stroking the arms and the legs, and they found that the kids gained weight, they got better, they spent 6 days less in the hospital, saved their families $3,000. Got the same treatment as all the other kids, but the additional thing they got was being touched, physical touch. Kiri and Brielle were 2 little girls born 12 months prematurely. 12 weeks prematurely, sorry. Did I say 12 months? Did I really? Now that would be an immaculate conception if there ever was one. Mercy. Okay. So you triggered the pregnancy story. I got to share another statistic with you just quickly. Ladies, do you know that women who are giving birth, they did a research study. Women who had a supportive companion in the room, hopefully that would be a husband, supportive if he's conscious, versus those who don't have a supportive companion. So those who had a supportive companion in the room, guess what the length on average their labor was? It was less, 8 hours. Those who did not have a supportive person in the delivery room with them, you know what the average labor was for them? 3 days. It feels like 3 days when you're the husband watching it. It's 19 hours. So anyway, just interesting little tidbit. So these little girls born 12 weeks too early, Kiri and Brielle, they were not doing well. Kiri was doing well, but Brielle wasn't. Brielle, she was losing weight, blood oxygen levels weren't good, and the nurse on duty knew that she was probably not going to make it. So she went to the director, and she told him about a seminar she had just attended about the power of touch, and she said, I think we need to put these 2 little girls in the same incubator, which at the time, no hospital would do that nationally. It was against policy to do that. The administrator said, okay, get the parents to sign that they won't sue us, and if they want to do that, we'll do it. And so a parent's going to do whatever it takes to save their kid. So they put both little girls in the same incubator, and immediately Kiri reached over and put her arm around her little sister Brielle. Wasn't prompted. No one did it. She did it herself. And within hours, Brielle's blood oxygen levels started rising. And each day after that, she started gaining weight until at the end, both little girls were at the same level with their health, and they left the hospital, 2 healthy little girls with bright futures. And the only difference it made was touch. Touch. And it doesn't just have to be human touch. So Maggie, this is for you. They did a research project with men who had hypertension, and they wanted to see what would have the best effect on those men. Would it be their best friend or a dog? What do you think had the best effect? It was the dog. Why was it the dog? They love you unconditionally. Where the best friend, although he's a best friend, the best friend still has an opinion, right? The dog didn't have an opinion. The dog's just there. He's happy to be in your life. They found with people who had heart attacks, they did a study on people who had heart attacks, those who owned dogs and those who didn't. And this would apply to cats and other things. I don't know if it would apply to fish, but this would apply to our little furry animals. Where is it here? They found that, do I have this slide? At the end of a year, let me see here. Here we go, right here. 1 year after being hospitalized, only 6% of the pet owners died compared to 28% of the patients who didn't own pets. Look, the finding was independent of disease severity, exercise, or other known factors. So they said the reason why far fewer folks died was because they had pets. So there's a relationship we can have between ourselves and the animals under our care. The exception might be if the animal would be a burden, probably wouldn't have a positive effect. It would only create stress. Good, this is what I wanted to get to while we have time. Healthy relationships. We're on the downward path now, or whatever you want to call it. These are rules for having healthy relationships. The one I want to focus on is number 8. If you want to have a healthy relationship, whether it's in your family or at church, you must decide you're not going to play fair anymore. We've always been taught to play fair. We've seen it modeled. That's the way it works. Playing fair is like this. If you give me the cold shoulder, I'm going to give you the cold shoulder. If you say something bad about my family, I'm going to say something bad about you. It's kind of like a trade. It's almost like a contract. I give back to you what you give to me. That's playing fair. It's this idea of 50-50. If you want to have unfulfilling relationships and conflict in your faith community or at church, just decide to play fair from now on. I mean, keep playing fair. It's called trade. It's trading. First level of relationships is selfishness, where it's just about you and you only stay in the relationship for what you can get. The next level beyond that, we don't have time to talk about this today, is trade. Here's the thing. A lot of people say, well, I want more love in my life. Well, how can you have more love in your life? Be more loving. If you want more affection, what can you be? More affectionate. If you need forgiveness, what can you be? More forgiving. See, what we have to decide this morning is we're not going to let them set our standard for our culture of relationship. Regardless of what you do to me, I've decided this is my standard for me. And I'm going to be who I am, and I'm going to interact with you based on my standard. Well, let's go through it really fast. So the next standard is taking 100% responsibility. That I don't react to you. I am who I am, regardless of what you do. That's where we need to get to. The fourth and last level would be, and Jesus modeled this, is Jesus showed us something that it's an area for growth for me, and I want him to build my heart out so I can become this because it's not natural for me. Jesus Christ showed us that the highest standard is that I will love you not only when you're not meeting my needs, I will love you level 4 even when you're hurting me. On the cross, nails in his hands, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. So if you want to have a fulfilling, meaningful, productive relationship, then make a commitment to strive for level 4, and you're not going to get there in your own strength or power. I guarantee it. To me, that's a God thing. Because in our hearts, with so much hate in this world, what do we want? What do I want to do? I want to hate back, especially when it involves my family or my son or something like that. But the Bible says they will know we are his disciples by our love. You can't fake it. You can fake a Creation Health seminar. You can fake a crusade. You can fake a Daniel and Revelation seminar. You cannot. You can fake sincerity. You cannot fake compassion. You cannot fake genuine love. At the end of the day, when people come into your life and they hurt you, I'm not saying we shouldn't be smart. I'm not just saying let evil rush in. I'm saying no matter what rushes in, that doesn't change us. We are still a loving people. Yes, there's justice. Yes, there are consequences. Yes, there are all those things, right? But we reach a point where we can say, Father, forgive them. I'm not there. I want to be there. But when the church is there, and it's not, I've had the chance to be a church member now for 13 years. Yeah, I've grown up in the church, and I pastored for all those years, but I've not pastored a church since 2004. Do you know when they reach out to me? When there's a capital stewardship campaign going on, and they need a financial commitment. That's all of a sudden when I'm on the radar. You know what I'm saying? That is sad. We need to, if you have to tell people you're the caring church, guess what you're not? You're not the caring church. That was the big slogan in the early 90s. We are the caring church. We have to tell people we're the caring church. The point here is we go to relationships to give, not get. We go to relationships to give, not get. And that's every relationship you have. If you want to turn your life around, your world upside down, you go to relationships to give, not get. Whether it's in your marriage, your children, your work, your church. That's how it works. All right, Rockefeller Jr., he said, giving is the secret of a healthy life, not necessarily money, but whatever a person has of encouragement, sympathy, and understanding. He knew about money, but this really came from an interesting story. His dad was a miserable, horrible man, Rockefeller Sr. People hated him. He was, a millionaire by the age of, 33? World's first billionaire by his late 40s or around 50. And his employees hated him because they felt they were using him for him to amass this great wealth. They hated him so much, they would hang him in effigy in the oil fields and set him on fire. They hated him so much he had death threats, and he had to have protection 24/7 just to protect himself from his employees. And by the time he was 53 years old, the doctors came and gave him a physical, and they said, Mr. Rockefeller, we have some bad news. Your health is in such poor shape, because what was happening was he had alopecia. His hair was falling out. He was so sick and stressed, the only thing he could eat and keep down were milk and crackers. So he wasn't eating. And they said, we think if things don't change, you might have 12 months at best. So if you have any affairs, business-wise, to get in order, this is the time to start working on that. When they told him he would likely be dead in 12 months, it was like a come-to-Jesus moment for him. And he was a Christian. He was a member of the Northern Baptist Church. But he wasn't really very Christian. It didn't seem. But when he heard that message, he might be dead in 12 months, something flipped inside of him, where he stopped living just for himself, and he started actually living to make a difference in people's lives. Rockefeller Sr. And so these are some of the things that he did that I didn't know he had done until I started teaching this. It says he decided to use his billions of dollars to benefit others. Hospitals, universities, libraries, all that. I'm going fast because I want to get through this on time. It says his generosity aided in the discovery, get this, penicillin. Who knew? His contributions to medicine enabled researchers to find cures for tuberculosis, malaria, diphtheria, and other diseases. And his contributions helped rid the South of its greatest physical and economic plague at the time, which was the hookworm. So at the age of 53, he's told he's going to die. He starts living a selfish life, or a life based on trade, and he tries to live as he can at level 3. I don't know if he got to level 4. God only knows, because I don't know this man. But he made a change in his life. And so at what age do you think Mr. Rockefeller Sr. died? They said he'd be dead at 54. Very good guesses. It was actually 98 years old. It was right before his 98th birthday. He lived an extra 45 years when he started socially connecting with people and living to make their lives better, not just his life better. Des Cummings says God created life in 6 days, but on the 7th day he created love. We were meant to thrive in this environment of love and social connection and interpersonal relationships. So, if you want to strengthen your interpersonal relationships, we always give people some tips. Send a card. Emailing and texting is nice, but people like something in the post. Something you can hold that's real and tangible. Send a card. Call them up. Go out for a lunch or a dinner. Give someone a hug. Look them in their eyes. Let them know that you really care and love them as you're bringing them into your body, if it's appropriate to give them a hug. And remember this, it's better to eat Twinkies with your friends than broccoli by yourself. Has Creation Health, brothers and sisters. You won't find that. You won't find that in CHIP or New Start. Which, by the way, they are both very good programs, CHIP and New Start. And as you give attention to this area of your life, you're just one choice away from living a better life when it comes to relationships. Is it really quick, or should we talk afterwards? I don't know. Rockefeller? Oh, yeah. Marge. I don't know. All I know is the Florida Hospital Publishing Director sent us an email saying that Marge, is Marge, right? Yeah, Marge Jetton, that she had passed on. I don't know. You can Google her. You probably find it. Did she just fall asleep? Do you know for a fact? She just kind of, could be. Is it? Okay, so she just died in her sleep. 108? So she died like 7 years after that was made. So it's like maybe 4 years ago or something. Yeah, it's amazing. All right. Thank you. I'll be around to answer questions. Before you go, Brad, we'll queue up maybe you can queue up, yes. Interpersonal relationships. Maybe we can get the video ready. Brad, and as soon as I pray, you can start playing it, and I'll be up here to answer questions. In 1985, on average, each of us had 3 people in which we could confide. 3 people. You see where I am? Next line, by 2004, that number had dropped to 2. 2. Third sentence. Today, and you know this, 25% of Americans have no one to confide in. 25%. 25% is on line 3. Line 4, good relationships improve our life. Improve our life. Good relationships improve our life. Bump down to the next line. Healthy relationships mean healthy children. There's a whole section on children that we didn't cover. Healthy relationships mean healthy children, which that starts in the womb, by the way. You'd be blown away by the research. Last line, loving touch promotes good health. Loving touch promotes good health. If you missed those, come see me. I want to make sure people get out of the room so they can get to the next obligation. Thank you for being here today. We end tomorrow with Outlook. Before you go, let me pray with you. Father in heaven, we thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for wanting to love us and loving us. Be with my friends as they leave. Bless them through this day. May their spirits be encouraged. And please bring someone in their life that we can encourage as well with your love and grace, we pray. Amen. See you tomorrow. It's retail value of $3,500. No, I meant $3,500. It would have cost me $3,500 to buy these. Yes, sir. Let me get my stuff together. Yep, and let me turn my microphone off.